Hey, podcast listener, even if you are alone in your entrepreneurial journey, know that today, right now in your earbuds, you are joined by thousands of entrepreneurs from all around the globe seeking to grow better, more profitable, location-independent businesses. If you'd like to learn more about what we do and download our entire back catalog, check out tropicalmba.com. Welcome back to the TMBA pod. On this very podcast, just a few weeks ago, my co-host, the boss man, bemoaned the state of flip-flop quality in the world. And what happened next shouldn't surprise us. Listeners to this show had in fact started a product business that manufactured flip-flops. And not just any business, one that's doing really, really well. And so we thought, what the heck? Let's get them on the show and hear the story. And boss man, you did this interview, and I had a quick pre-listen to the conversation. I have to say, you covered some deeply philosophical stuff.
Okay, first question. Can American men embrace the backstrap on the flip-flop? Will there be a point in time where that happens?
Possibly.
This is a very critical question indeed. I think it's time that we adopt the backstrap, but I will leave it up to you, listener. Not you European listeners, you've already adopted it. You American listeners, should we adopt the backstrap? Our guest has done something amazing. Starting a physical products business, getting your physical product into big box retail, that is these big stores at the mall and these stores that have existed for a long time in America, Nordstrom's being one of them, is very difficult to do. It's very difficult to have an idea, to manufacture it, to be able to sell it, to be able to distribute it, to be able to keep track of your cash flow, to be able to take on investors. I think that these are some of the most complex businesses there are. And to watch somebody start it from ground zero and to take it to several employees in major distribution, I think is a huge accomplishment. So this episode is for those of you that are in the trenches, that are already doing this, that already have physical products that you're manufacturing, but it's also for those of you that might be curious about how to do this, where to start, how do you start, what happens in the beginning, how much money am I going to have to spend? These are all questions that we'll get into. So just a little bit of background about today's guest, who is Jeremy Stewart. And the company is called Harimari, which, by the way, I think is just a great name. And they sell premium flip-flops. Jeremy and his wife Leila started this company after they both lived in Indonesia, where Jeremy was a political consultant. Now, at first I was confused because Jeremy explained to me that the techniques he used as a political consultant were actually aiding him in this physical products business, and I just couldn't connect the dots. But as you'll hear in this episode, it all kind of makes sense.
I can feel you here, so I know this is real.
I started with a bag full of really bad ideas. I mean, looking back on it, flip-flops continue to stick around. It was one of those things where it was maybe never the lead idea, but the fact that I couldn't seem to cancel it out in any way, I couldn't poke holes in it as I could with a lot of other things, we started digging into other brands and digging into the industry as a whole. And what we found was it's a highly fragmented industry. I mean, the market share leader has 10% of the market globally and domestically in the US, and it's a $25 billion a year business, sandals and flip-flops. And about 15 of that's here in the U.S. And so it was rife for a new entrant. It's just, you got to bring something new to the table. When I set the target on flip-flops, I went around to college campuses, and we're based in Dallas, we're from Dallas. So I went around to college campuses in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and passed out flyers for focus groups and just offered college kids basically $50 and free pizza to come let us listen to their opinions and attitudes on flip-flops and sandals. And so I sat behind the glass for 3 days in Dallas running focus groups, and focus grouped about 100 people, ages 18 and call it 30, 34, men and women, and just asked all the questions that you would need to ask. Where do you buy? How often do you buy? What do you pay? What do you like? What do you dislike? We found kind of 2 or 3 key findings and just focused in and homed in on those key findings to start our business. And chief among those was that we knew it kind of before going into the focus groups, but just taking a physical poll of the people who came in to the focus groups, granted this was in spring of 2011, over half of them were just wearing flip-flops and sandals without knowing what the focus groups were in regard to. So there's this ever-ceasing trend towards casual in the US. And our kind of theory is that, the two major recipients of that trend in the footwear space are running shoes and flip-flops and sandals. But second, we noticed that whether people love flip-flops or whether people hate flip-flops and won't wear them, that there's a common loathing point, that little piece that goes between first and second toe, which is called the toe post. And really just kind of the pain periods of breaking in a new pair that go along with that. The third thing we found, and really kind of focusing on men specifically, was that we knew that women had a lot of color options. But really, when you looked at retail at that time, it was mostly just black and brown for men. And what we found just by, putting some embarrassingly bad crayon drawings and designs in front of focus groups on a projector was that if you presented it in the right way, most of the men gravitated towards some of the flip-flop designs we put out there with a pop of color. It just had to be done in the right way. It couldn't be too over the top. It just had to be subtle. And so kind of those three foundation points allowed us to kind of dig more thoroughly into the possibility of starting this business.
One of the things that I learned about you guys in my research, and you can tell me if this was part of your approach, but when I hear your story about these focus groups, you guys ordered your first shipment. I think you bought like 25,000 pairs of flip-flops. I kind of did the rough math on that before even having a customer or a way of distribution. It sounded very much like my story, filling up 2 containers, bringing them to the United States, hardly having a website, not doing a lot of testing or anything like that, having problems with the product when it comes over. I took what I would call like the most non-lean approach to launching a business ever, and it was extremely expensive. And I probably wouldn't recommend it to most people, and it seems like you did it the same way. But I think I had like an arrogance, or I had like a I have to win at this kind of approach. Why did you feel so confident? I'm guessing first, you could tell me, but I'm guessing you had somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 invested in this before you even sold a pair of flip-flops.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I don't know if it was confidence. I mean, they always say there's a thin line between, stupidity and bravery.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to think that we kind of fell on the stupidity side for the first year or so of our business. And maybe it was kind of that combined with just this irrational entrepreneurial exuberance that you're kind of starting on something new. You think you've got, lightning in a bottle. You think you've got, the next best thing, and you want to, show the world what it is. And yeah, I mean, just like you, I was comfortable traveling in Asia. I was comfortable visiting factories. So, I was kind of on the Alibaba manufacturing threads and kind of call it 2010, 2011, and trying to find and source factories and located, 15 to 20 that I thought were kind of good partners. They're, and by good partners, I mean, they responded to my emails.
Right. They actually delivered something.
Right. They responded to my emails. They provided samples. And then obviously minimum order quantities was kind of a huge question mark. We brought those 25,000 pairs back. We had huge problems, as I think anybody with their first kind of manufacturing experience abroad will tell you or is relayed. I mean, ours is such a cliche. It was, 40% of the pairs were unsellable. To make matters worse, the stickers that we had for importing were not big enough, according to the powers that be in the U.S. once they were received. And so we had to get all of our friends and family down into a bonded warehouse for 5 days to kind of resticker 25,000 pairs. And then kind of the third, hit to our psyche and starting this business is that, right when we were starting, we said, look, let's do something good with those 40% of the 25,000. So 10,000 pairs of flip-flops that were unsellable. We said, let's do something good with those, not just let them sit in our warehouse. So we donated it to a 501c3.
Hey, just want to point out a 501c3 is basically code for a nonprofit organization in the United States.
Had them earmarked specifically for a few countries abroad where, they wouldn't tarnish our brand, but they could still be worn. And to be clear, these were defective pairs that, were just either terrible looking out of the box or just missed a few things, but could still be worn. And so just as we're launching our brand for the first time on our website and in stores, where our price point is $60, we start seeing all these kind of defective pairs of Harimars pop up on different websites for, $5 a pair. It just all kind of added up to your classic entrepreneurial comedy of errors. We just couldn't, it's like we couldn't have launched worse.
What was your thinking then? Were you like on the verge of a meltdown, or were you thought like, oh, this is just part of the process, or were you like ready to pack it in?
Funny enough, like we weren't ready to pack it in at all. Like, that was it never even entered our mind space. I mean, I think having worked abroad for so long and in kind of a very entrepreneurial atmosphere to begin with, I think that kind of teaches you to either adapt or kind of die, We knew going into this that because of our lack of experience in footwear, we were going to make some mistakes. And the fact that also too that, we're starting this from Dallas, which has zero footwear just as a city. We didn't have a lot of, mentors or brands we could reach out to and kind of learn from. So a lot of respects, we knew we were kind of learning on our own. We knew there would be a lot of trial by fire. It prompted us to obviously try to fix a lot of the things that weren't working, starting with our factory and starting with kind of how the whole process was netted out. But yeah, I mean, it kind of like strangely enough just added kind of fire to our tank, and we were ready to kind of come back the following year and do even better.
Who were some of your advisors? I'm imagining you working in this business with your wife. I can only imagine that's either a great relationship breaker or strengthener. And then who were some of the people that were advising you on some of the decisions that you needed to make?
To answer your first question, I mean, looking back at it now, I don't know how entrepreneurs start something on their own. I think I was very fortunate to have my wife in very early on from the get-go on Harimari. And for a lot of different reasons. Chief among them is that you have this kind of built-in cheering section with one another. You're kind of your own best support system. She was my biggest soundboard starting off. And so I think that those are kind of the positive things. And I think the third thing that was obviously hugely important to our business is that we both brought very different skill sets to our brand. And she had a sales background previous to Harimari, and she focused really on wholesale sales from the get-go, as well as PR and marketing. And so we kind of divided our responsibilities from the outset. And I'll say that doesn't mean that there weren't issues to start off with. I mean, we definitely, I would say, stepped on each other's toes a lot in the beginning, and it caused a lot of friction between us and maybe in a little bit in our relationship at home as well. I think that what we've really come to appreciate over the last, 4 or 5 years is that doing this together has really been a hugely important part of one of the reasons why I think we've been able to scale so fast as a business. And I think that's key for us. In terms of advisors, most of our advisors early on, at least, tended to be leaders in kind of our local business community. I found that when we would try to reach out to leaders in whether they be in fashion or apparel or footwear, there really wasn't a lot of room to secure time with folks if you weren't living in the same city. I still think that's probably one of my biggest regrets in starting our business, is not being able to secure more face time with people in our industry and leaders in our industry. But I also think that there's some good in that, because we weren't following any traditional roadmaps. We didn't know any better. There's a great example with regards to kind of sales and how sales teams are usually structured. And we found very early on that there was kind of a typical way to do it. And we just said, yeah, that doesn't seem very smart, or it doesn't seem like the right way to do it. And kind of took a different approach. And what we've found is I think it worked. And so I think there are a lot of examples like that where, because we didn't know any better, we were actually just taking what we thought was just smart business practice and applying it to, an industry.
How is your sales process different than other people's?
This is another thing that actually came out of focus groups, was that we actually thought that Harimari was going to be, we wanted it to be actually from our kind of initial concept to be kind of the next Bonobos or Warby Parker, but do it for flip-flops. And from our focus groups, we quickly learned that for footwear specifically, unlike glasses or pants or shirts, people really want to try on, test drive, and kind of feel footwear at a store level before they're willing to kind of give you a shot. Keep in mind, this was now, 9 years ago, and kind of maybe not the beginning, but certainly still kind of the nascent days of, online retailing with regards to kind of returns and exchanges. Specifically for footwear, what our respondents were saying was that before they would trust a footwear brand online to purchase, they would need to see it in retail stores. And so that's when my wife joined, and really from day one, we had set about with her and with a few others to really charge our internal team with sales versus reaching out externally through independents. For the most part, we really try to focus on growing that sales team internally on the wholesale side.
Jeremy, part of the story that I'm just finding to be really interesting is that in a lot of ways, focus groups, pounding the pavement locally, spending a bunch of money up front, like you guys were acting like a large business out of the gate in terms of your time, money, and resources. And it's my experience, especially in the community that we're in, internet-based businesses, but a lot of them sell physical products online, that there is the idea that it makes sense to act not so much like a big company, but act like a smaller company at first, not any of this posturing and whatnot, because people kind of see through that very quickly, right? And then build yourself into whatever brand it becomes. But again, I'm coming back to this idea that you guys really started with like a lot of big ideas and a lot of, I feel like, vision, and it's worked out for you. And I find that to be interesting because it's so risky. Like it could have backfired so horribly. Was there a moment where you thought like this might backfire? All this investment, all this time?
Yeah, I think that our day one commitment was that we would bring ideas to the table and how we could change at least the product, like I said, the geographic avenue, and then kind of the marketing and advertising, but that we wouldn't devote a lot of money to it outside of the product itself, and that we would really devote our own time, energy, et cetera, to making up. But I mean, for the first 3 years, 4 years of our business, my wife and I were, and along with several interns, and we were still fulfilling all of our orders ourselves in our warehouse. We were very scrappy. We wanted to make sure that despite, maybe kind of outward appearances, we were doing it the right way and we were being fiscally responsible. And so our first office was a loft over a makeshift warehouse. So you couldn't even call it a warehouse. It was like a storage room with some racking in it. It was actually a storage room with kind of 20-foot ceilings. The racks would go all the way up. There wasn't enough room to even put like a ladder in there. So we had to, climb up the racks, physically climb the racks, kind of reach the top shelves to bring down product. I remember just like trying to convince an intern to come work for us. It was like, the biggest sales job you've ever tried to put over on somebody, just trying to convince them to come in, because it was a cramped office. You could hear and feel each other breathe, and you couldn't talk on the phone without, having somebody talk right next to you and just kind of ruin your conversation. So it was really, threadbare for the first 2 years, I call it. And that's also because my wife and I were bootstrapping it, and we really wanted to keep it lean. And I think that part of that was the philosophy that, we'd seen a lot of business plans. I'd seen a lot of business plans and a lot of folks that were kind of willing to talk the talk, so to speak. But the real value of businesses and entrepreneurialism is the ability to execute. And so we wanted to show people, we want to show our potential investors down the road that we could execute and we could actually, prove demand for this product before we ever raise a dollar from outside. We just decided to stay lean and for the first call it year and a half, 2 years, and before we raised money.
Who was the first person that you hired and what did they do at the company?
The first person we hired was a student out of SMU, and they did everything. They did a lot of fulfillment in our warehouse. In fact, I remember in the early days, the first year, we would physically have to go in and basically copy and paste addresses and names from our online store over into our shipping software.
Right.
That was, obviously pretty labor intensive, and the poor kid had to, I think he lasted like 3 months before he was like, I've had this. And
and you're like, come on, man, you're supposed to build the process. Like, I know it's awful, but just step up to the plate here.
For us, it's kind of like a challenge. I mean, I think there's something intrinsically masochistic about being an entrepreneur where you walk into work every day, you get punched in the nose, and you come back the next morning asking for more. It's just this mindset of taking on these challenges. We're very fortunate to have a great team right now of people. We're still small. I mean, we're not large. We have, call it 15 full-time employees. But I think that the thread that kind of ties everyone together is they all have the same mindset of willing to wear, 10 different hats, 10 different jobs, and all willing to kind of take on a challenge each and every day and not get, burnt out on it.
I'm actually a product designer. That's what I went to school to be. And so when I tell people that one of the first companies that we owned was a physical product company, that makes a lot of sense to them. But for you, you weren't a fashion designer and you weren't a product designer. So tell me how you went about designing products as a non-designer.
I mean, I think in short, really poorly. I found a notebook the other day that was kind of hidden in the closet here at our office. That was some of the first design work we did. It was terrible. It was like crowns and pencils, and I literally, now looking back on it, I think our factory was the first factory and the second factory, probably in the third we were working with, were just laughing when they saw these, because I mean, unlike traditional CADs or tech packs they're used to receiving, these were they were drawings. We weren't even choosing Pantone or.
You're just like, not that red, this red. And they're like,
Exactly. Well, it's even worse. It was like trying to match it, I think, to crayon colors. It was almost like, no, crayon number 164, like,
Well, a lot of people, they lean on the factory. They just, they find a factory that's actually making flip-flops and they're like, hey, listen, man, I know you got a lot of great ideas, but like, this is what everybody else is doing. Let me help you out here.
That's right. And I think that we might have even been smarter if we had just done that. Our design work was really spotty, called for the first 3 or 4 years. Literally the first iteration, I guess, of our flip-flops, the kind of on top of our first year, I guess. So this would be year 2 going in. We just said, make that same flip-flop, but do it with leather, We definitely limped along in that regard for kind of, call it 4 years, until we finally hired a design consultant to come help us kind of design some initial lines. And then we were definitely subsisting off of our other talents beyond product design for those first kind of 3 to 4 years. And only, I would say, until 4 years ago, did we really start making a lot of inroads into innovative materials, innovative construction methods, really making the flip-flop truly comfortable kind of from day one, which is our brand's differentiating point. It's such that, you buy a pair of our flip-flops, and our commitment is that out of the gates, they're going to be comfortable. That's from a kind of a memory foam toe piece that we had kind of one of our initial designers help us design. We've since filed patent for it, to, including memory foam in the straps, to helping to make sure that the bonding process we're using and the layers of our flip-flops is strong and holds up, so that we're creating a flip-flop with a long wear life, so that we're not asking our customers to kind of throw away flip-flops every year like you do with other brands.
Interesting. That's two of the things that I wanted to ask you about here is, how much IP is there in the flip-flop space?
I think very little. It's such a simple, seemingly simple footwear option. I will say that it's far more complicated to make a flip-flop than I think most people know about. And I think that's one of the reasons why it took us, call it 6 years to gain a patent on our toe post, is because it is so simple that it's harder to gain IP traction on. But I think once you gain that IP, it's far more inclusive, and the kind of footprint's much larger than you might see in other highly acute kind of IP areas like tech, for example.
I got to imagine that it's pretty limited just because of the previous art nature of the flip-flop. But I can imagine also, like, one of the only other patents out there is for a bottle opener in the bottom of your flip-flop, because I only see one brand doing that. Are there other things that you can think of that are going on in terms of IP?
One of our core tenets from day one is to really produce kind of a classic flip-flop. At least it looks pretty classic on the outside, pretty timeless. Really kind of pushing away from fads, really pushing both in color and in design, and then really trying to add comfort to that. So it's almost like, it's like trying to create an orthotic, almost like a nurse shoe.
Yeah.
Trying to make it classic on the outside. And so that's been our challenge. And so I would say that, we don't really run into a lot of IP issues in that regard. I think if anything, we're trying to figure out what other IP can be had, or what can we create that isn't out there right now, but that still kind of mirrors and holds up to the kind of the core tenets of our brand DNA.
It's summertime, but I know you're still working hard because you're listening to this podcast. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, You want to get a leg up on your competition. There might not be any better way to do that than to grow a great team. And now you can do that with not only part-time and full-time jobs at Dynamite Jobs, but we can help you get freelancers to do gigs for you. And we do this all 100% free to get started. Check it out over at dynamitejobs.co. We've built a database of over 5,000 resumes that are targeted at people that understand the sorts of businesses you're running. That's from a list of over 20,000 active subscribed job seekers and freelancers. Our role is to point the most relevant candidates towards your job. We can even help you out with interviews if you choose. We're pretty flexible. We're not just the next job board or database. We offer flexible hiring solutions to be as hands-off or as hands-on as you need. And our team is so confident that you'll love hiring with us that you can go ahead and get started with your job or gig post for free. So make your summer a winning one. Build that team, and we can help you over at dynamitejobs.co. Thanks for checking us out.
So you go to China 4 times a year or so. Is it still the case in China? Because I haven't been there for several years now, but is it still the case that like it's just one block and all they do is make flip-flops, or one region?
Yeah, I mean that's how it's been, and I think there's starting to be a shift. I think most of that shift is out of southern China, just given kind of rising economics of that area, and obviously the kind of U.S.-China trade worries. So I think that a lot of that's beginning to shift kind of out of. So for example, footwear and flip-flops kind of traditionally, a lot of them are made in southern China, kind of right across from Hong Kong and Guangzhou. You're seeing a lot of that production either shift kind of to northern China, I'd say, or to countries outside of China. I guess since I've started traveling there in earnest, 10 years, people in our footwear space have really started to go elsewhere. It's not as finite as it used to be. It's now starting to really spread out to other places, other areas.
In terms of flip-flop manufacturing, there's a couple questions that I have. One of the things that I always hear from my friends in the apparel business is like, it's just a nightmare in terms of the amount of SKUs that you have to have because of all the different sizes, shapes, colors, all of that. Just a quick clarification, a SKU or an SKU is a way to identify a stock product in a store environment. And a lot of times these days, it's even used to identify products online. What was your approach in the beginning in terms of like basically how to limit your capital investment but still sell flip-flops while kind of hitting the mark? Is it the case that, you know, if you have a size 7 flip-flop and a size 8 and a size 9 and a size 10, it's like a different mold? Or is it pretty easy with the flip-flop because the sizes are, you know, they don't have to be exact like a shoe?
Right. So when we first started out, we stayed away from molds and we just used what they call kind of cookie sheet outsoles. And so you literally have a large molded rubber outsole, and then you just stamp your outsoles out of that, and then you would, you know, basically sandwich together all the different pieces of the flip-flop in assembly, and then you buff it, and that was how you made it. And starting with that approach, and then limiting our size runs to just whole sizes only. So unlike in your typical shoes, or whether it be running or dress shoes, et cetera, we really try to cut down SKUs in that regard. And what we found is that people are open to, you know, whole sizes only because it's a sandal, and it just, you know, tends to kind of fit feet a lot easier than shoes. And so that was really good from a kind of strategic capital investment standpoint. But yeah, we were still conscious of, you know, spending too much, and we really tried to go deeper on, you know, popular colors. And so our first year out of the gates, we had one style, and we just went and, you know, call it 4 or 5 different colors for men and women in that one style. I think that was the right move. And I'd say that probably the worst thing a company can do, at least in my opinion, and kind of out of the gates, is just having too many styles, too many SKUs, and really you're fighting on so many different fronts. It's not just kind of capital, it's warehouse space, it's freight forwarding, it's cost of inventory turn or the lack thereof. We've made a concerted effort from the get-go to limit SKUs, limit colors. That's obviously changed over the years, and we've developed more colors, more SKUs. But when it comes down to it, I think we're still fortunate that we have the model that we have, which is, you know, tended to kind of become almost like a wholesale first model out of the gates. And now I'd say at least by revenue, we're kind of 50-50 between wholesale and web, and they each serve their own purpose. It's almost like having two separate businesses under one roof. For me, I would think it would be really tough to go totally and 100% go to DTC.
Which is direct to consumer?
Right, direct to consumer, web only. There's so many things that wholesale helped us with each year, and that can be anything from, because we are capturing sales almost 9 months in advance of shipping them. We have a really good idea from wholesalers, from the orders they place, and once we pull them together, we see the numbers, what they think are going to be popular, what colors, what the size runs for them are starting to look like in terms of kind of that bell curve that we need to know about. But also we know kind of at a minimum what our cash flows look like the next year, the following year. Whereas if we're just direct to consumer only, it's just not that it's a 100% gamble. I'm sure you have some idea, but still for us, it's great to be able to forecast that cash that keeps kind of the lights on and everyone paid, and then add kind of direct to consumer on top of that.
Well, I think people are probably thinking right now, like, obviously what's going to happen to retail as we've known it for the last 50 years. One of the advantages also I have to imagine with going direct to wholesale is that you actually know how to control your cost, because, in effect, it needs to be chopped again once the wholesaler gets it, to retail and then sells it to the person. So you probably learned some lessons there. If you start the other way and you go direct to consumer, right? A lot of people might say like, oh, it's okay if I just make like 25% on this. And then you try and sell it to a wholesaler and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't going to work.
That's right. And I think that a lot of the ways we've been fortunate in that regard. And because I think out of the gates, I want to say our first year out, we were 90% wholesale by revenue. It does a few things. One, it forces you to be really lean, right, in terms of your overhead. Two, it makes you kind of learn the intricacies of fulfillment and warehousing from that regard for consumer goods. Once you start adding in more web, obviously, it dramatically changes your profitability.
It does seem, though, from the outside that like a flip-flop would be a direct-to-consumer product, but actually you started with a wholesale route. You are essentially selling to the end user, but it's through an intermediary, but it is a retail product. It's not like you're selling Microsoft Suite for corporations,
No question. And honestly, too, one of the things that we probably don't give enough credit to that was really important early on is the intrinsic marketing that comes along with having product on the floor of really great retailers. And we've been very fortunate that because our flip-flops are created with premium customer in mind, that we tend to also be carried in premium stores, whether it be a Nordstrom or like an REI or really nice physical retail locations. And I think people seeing our product there over the years has had a tremendous effect. We found that just over the years that kind of that in-store piece tends to lend, especially new brands, a lot of credibility.
How much of these retailers have they in the past, and how much are they currently driving your design process? Are they coming to you at the beginning of the season saying, these are the colors that we're interested in? Are they saying this is the style?
Sometimes. Really quickly, back to Nordstrom for 1 second, because I do think it's important to point out, is that give them credit for bringing on new brands, because I do think where we're seeing retail change is that maybe in the past where mom and pop one-off retail locations were more likely to take chances on new brands. I think what we're actually seeing because of the state of retail is that those one-offs or the smaller chains are actually becoming more conservative with the brands that they carry. They're just looking to the proven moneymakers versus the new brands. And so for us, kind of given that climate, even 6-7 years ago, for Nordstrom to come in or Trunk Club or whoever it might have been at that time to say, hey, we'll take a chance on you guys was a huge deal.
Jeremy, you mentioned investment. Can you talk a little bit about that? I kind of get the sense that maybe you have some partners in the business outside of you and your wife at this point. And when did that happen, if so?
Yeah, we do. Like I mentioned, our first year and a half, 2 years, we bootstrapped this. That included both R&D and a launch. We wanted to show proof of concept. We wanted to show proof of demand. We wanted to show that this thing, Harimari, this concept of providing premium flip-flops that were comfortable and had pop of color, had legs. I went to friends and family, kind of call it 1 year after we launched, and they made up, it was called 8 investors, and they made up, I think we raised $500,000. First of all, we had no idea what to even do with $500,000. I think we knew that we needed to invest in product And that, everyone was telling us that you basically had to go deep in inventory. So I think 90% of that $500,000 was invested straight into inventory with this time a better factory and better manufacturing in place. But that really helped propel our business and kind of, get it going from its early rounds. And so that was 2013. And then we raised a Series B in 2017. And we raised about $2 million in 2017. But again, none of it was institutional, all high net worth folks and individuals, and most of them kind of regional to Texas and Dallas, and people who were just interested in supporting a local brand. And so we really tried to, given kind of the links between those raises, we really tried to maximize the value our investors kind of put by not going out every year to raise money, and really try to make those investments last and grow, I would say, in more of an organic way than kind of a hyper fundraise fueled way, which is pretty typical. Obviously, a lot of that's because we don't want to dilute anybody, including ourselves, but also because we just want to grow smartly. We try to be very methodical, try to be very cognizant of how each dollar is spent. And yeah, I think that kind of proves out. And if you saw our headquarters today, which is still pretty minimalistic, we've got office, warehouse, and retail store under one roof, and we're still pretty closely packed together, even though now we have doors in some of our offices. It's still in a lot of ways a pretty small overhead operation by design, and I think that's one of the ways we hope to kind of continue to make sure we're maximizing value and just doing the right things.
So a couple things about this raising money. First thing is, are you guys still the majority owners of the company?
Yep, we are.
And the second question I have about this, because we went through it, everybody thinks like, oh, you have a product company, it's doing millions of dollars. The math that nobody does is that you actually have to have millions of dollars in inventory at any given time. And so it's like the revenue is proportional to the amount of money that you have sitting on the shelves. And at some point, I'm sure for you guys, it's become a significant amount of money. That being said, we always, in our physical products business, and it probably didn't get to the point where yours is now, but we always earmarked or invested back into the inventory. And our growth was, I think, in a lot of ways hampered by that. So, you went out and you raised some money. My guess is, and you can tell me if this is true or not, a lot of it probably went into inventory. That being said, I'm always curious about why someone in your position would go and raise money versus going to the bank. Because one route, they don't own any of your company. And then the other route, they own a portion of your company. They may or may not have control. In your case, it doesn't seem like they do. So what was your thinking when you started to involve, especially friends and family? I mean, these are fragile relationships in a lot of ways. What was your thinking versus maybe just going to the bank and saying, hey, I need a loan for inventory?
It's a really good question. Honestly, it's one that we still weigh every day. The simple answer is we do both. We do go to the bank as well as to outside investors. And I think that the reason for taking on outside investors, at least for me, there's several. But to me, as a business owner, you've already got a lot on the line as it is. There is a threshold for risk that I think some people are willing to push to 100%. And at the end of the day, I would certainly love to retain 100% ownership, but I also want to make sure that as bank drafts go, and as you're still kind of connected to those bank drafts, whether it be personal guarantees or just by default because it's your company, you inherently have more risk on the table. And so I think being able to kind of de-lever a lot of that risk is important for me. And then also too, I think there's a great kind of secondary benefit to bringing more people in to an ownership capacity with our business. You now have, in our case, call it 40 folks who are apostles for your brand. And I think that it's a great way to, especially if you get great people involved, which I feel like we do, it's a great way to help spread the word of your brand, and also to help get more flip-flops and more shoes on the right people's feet to help drive demand. So I just think it's a case-by-case scenario with business owners. And it's just kind of, what are you willing to put on the line? And then how long are you willing to kind of bear that risk?
I want to ask you one more question about Harimari Studios. Looks like a skunkworks project within a flip-flop company. So it looks like you got some bags, some shoes. You might be doing some like Kickstarter activities. What was the genesis behind that?
I think it's just a focus group by a different name. It's voting with your dollars, right? You are either going to fund production of this or not. And the benefit to us is seeing which products move and which don't. And then it's also financing the production of those without any, bottom line hit to Harimari, into our core business, which is, flip-flops and in large part now shoes. That's the simple thinking. Certainly we're going to reap the benefit, hopefully, of continuing to add new products to that. And especially as we look to expand our product line. I'm a big believer that one of the big, errors that a lot of brand owners or brand CEOs make is they start going to different product lines too quickly before people have a chance to discover their brand for, what they started as. So for us, I really love for people to start with a pair of Harimari flip-flops. If they like what they see, touch, feel, they enjoy their experience, then move on to either other flip-flops or into, some of the kind of the retro running shoes that we're now offering, or some of the boots that both have comfort components to it that we're now offering. Instead of, like a lot of other brands I see, they start with what their core product is and they move too fast, whether it's like, beach towels or blenders or, kites or thermometers. I have no idea. But the point is that, by the time you get to your 10,000th customer, they don't even know what you were starting as or where your heritage was as a brand.
Right.
And most likely, because you've started focusing on all these different things now, that you're probably delivering a more mediocre product across the board, even with your original product, versus if you just stuck to your original idea and try to get really good at it.
I've got 4 more questions here. These are quick fire questions, Jeremy. So just give me like 1 or 2 sentences on them. Okay. First question. Can American men embrace the backstrap on the flip-flop? Will there be a point in time where that happens?
Possibly. I have to relay a really cool story, and I'll take a couple sentences.
Go for it.
We've had several wounded veterans as of late who have lost legs serving abroad, whether through IEDs or other accidents. And we've started putting backstraps on flip-flops for their prosthetic legs. And it's one of the neatest things I've ever been able to be a part of.
Most iconic or your favorite flip-flop can be yours or somebody else's?
Oh, man. I got to go with ours. I think that probably our most iconic are Scouts flip-flops, really what gained traction and most immediate kind of visible notoriety for our brand, I think. And that's a flip-flop with a nubuck leather footbed and then a kind of a color-driven strap that goes across the foot.
Should the big toe be the mascot for the flip-flop? It seems to do the most amount of work.
I definitely agree.
Final question. Is there a flip-flop mafia having quarterly coffee to decide price fixing and changes in the human foot?
If there is, I don't know about it.
Jeremy, I just want to say thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you on the show. I could literally talk flip-flops for the next hour and a half. I'm very passionate about it. It seems like you are too. I wish you and your wife and your family and everybody at your company the best.
Ian, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Dan, did this get you excited to start another product business? I mean, forklifts, warehouses, SKUs, inventory management systems, complex financials. What do you think?
I got to say, first off, your interview skills are off the chains. You should do more. If you could even elevate your interview skills to the next level and we could just sell more advertising against the podcast or raise our rates. This to me seems like a more interesting business model than going back to doing the really, truly difficult things that are required and running a business that requires inventory and funding and product design and all these kinds of things. So I like the interviews, actually. I like the talk itself.
I can't say I'm not tempted, Dan. It's like once you have the skill set, once you understand how it works, all the moving parts, it's like it's very tempted to hear this and think like, oh, yeah, I got a couple ideas kicking around. Maybe we'll start a focus group or 2.
I'll tell you what, enormous thanks to the folks at Harimari, not only for coming by the show and doing this interview with us, but also for starting this flip-flop company so that Ian isn't going to be bugging me about it every week anymore. So we were right up on the ledge there, and now we're back to just sticking to the pod.
I don't know if you heard, Dan, but he said there's still room for new incumbents.
If I'm being completely honest, as I get older, I realize how hard growing these businesses is, And so if it is the case that we're going to take some resources and start a new product business, I just want to make sure we're sure about it. All right, boss man, we are going to get moving on to rock and reviews. What track are you going to play for us this week?
Dan, this is an oldie but a goodie, and had to search long and hard again this week to find one that you approved of. This is Cold Cave, and it's off their album from 2011 called Cherish the Light Years. This is The Great Pan is Dead.
Well, ever since we brought back your music stylings and the long-forgotten rock and reviews, we got a new review. Give us the applause. 5 stars from Brennan. Heard on the latest pod that you hadn't had a fresh review in 6 months, so I figured I'd drop one by. Thanks, Brennan. We appreciate it. The boss man is beaming. He's a new listener here. I heard about you guys from Authority Hacker, Empire Flippers, and Niche Pursuits. That's right. You have to hear about us from multiple sources before you decide to listen to the Tropical podcast. Excellent content. I really enjoy hearing about location-independent businesses. And one last bit, age is a virtue on your pod. That's right, boss man. Brennan thinks our age is a virtue that comes with more experience and more value. I'm 21, and it's excellent to hear from guys in their 30s and 40s. Which one of us is in their 40s? Oh, no. Both of us pretty soon, Brennan, since you've got real responsibilities like kids to take care of. And in my case, of course, I have a bicycle, Brennan. So it gives an extra layer of importance to find some stability in how you run your business. What an excellent review. I swear to God, these kids get smarter, younger, and I stay the same as I get older.
I don't know if you stay the same. I'm looking at your beard, and there's a little bit of gray in it. I just want to tell you, though, the other day I went back through my photos because mine's like getting gray rapidly. I don't know if it's stress from you or my new child or what it is. 2 years ago, very little gray. Now I'm starting to look like Kris Kringle. So, but I'm happy to see that you're also going a little bit gray. You are behind me, though, still.
We appreciate your reviews and some news. We got a phone call from someone we gave a shout to last week. Let's roll it.
Dan and Ian, thank you for the shout out. It's Rian, as you can hear from the South African accent. Yes, we had an amazing DCX Budapest. It was absolutely phenomenal. You should also credit Ed, who was helping me with this, and Catalina and the rest. It was all a team effort, and we had some great attendees. And in fact, the thing that made the event a success was the attendees, as you know. But hey, it was fantastic. Unfortunately, I'm not making it to DCBKK this year. I wanted to chat to you guys about this, but I'm heading for Austin next year because I want to actually ship my motorhome across and do some touring in the States. So yeah, you should definitely talk more about this community events because it's fantastic, man. So anyway, thanks for the good podcast and thanks for the shout out. Have a good time. See you guys soon.
Hey, Rian, thanks for calling in. And again, big shout for helping out with DCX Budapest. Heard so many wonderful things about this. And you know, we didn't mention Ed, but you don't mention the guy behind the guy. We all know Ed's the guy behind the guy.
Ed is the guy. You can't mention the guy on the show. Ed knows who he is. Everybody knows who Ed is, but you can't talk about Ed.
Sorry, I forgot for the shout there. And we're moving fast. And Ian has suggested that what an incredible honor it is to have people take their motorhomes and caravan to the events. And Ian has a special offer he'd like to offer you, Rian.
That's right. Last year, I think 3 people showed up in motorhomes. This year, it sounds like it might be 4, and you're importing yours. So what I'm going to offer you, Rian, is free hookups and parking at my house for as long as you'd like. And in fact, I'd like to know more about how much it costs to ship a motorhome to the United States because I might just need to go motorhome shopping for you.
Maybe, one of Ian's great pleasures in life is helping other people secure wonderful car deals. And if you want to read more about that, search for Tropical MBA and the word entrepreneurmobile, and you'll see sort of the seeds of Ian's wisdom, but you cannot imagine how deep that rabbit hole goes. Oh my goodness. We've even done a few episodes on the topic, and on deal cutting in general, sort of the core of Ian's entrepreneurial spirit. We'll link up to those this week.
Tell you what, every time my significant other thinks that she's going to catch me on the computer looking at something naughty, she peeks around the screen and it's cars, and she's both disappointed and happy at the same time every time.
And a big shout to all the members of the Dynamite Circle who are hosting those member-run DCX events all around the world. And of course, Ian, even though Rian won't be there, we are looking forward to DC BKK this year. Already, the plans are in motion. Hundreds of members from all around the world are flying in. Couldn't be more excited. That's it for this week's show. Thanks for listening. We'll be back, as always, next Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hey, thanks for listening to the Tropical MBA podcast. You can go to tropicalmba.com, get access to hundreds of back episodes and all kinds of other goodies. Load up your iPod. That is the cheapest way to fly business class on your next international flight. We will see you next Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Daddy.